everyone. My name's Frank McGuire. I'm the program manager for Pennsylvania Environmental Council. I'm joined today by AJ Schwartz and Colin Hall of Environmental Planning and Design. Um, Thanks for joining us for the Go to Trails webinar. We're going to be giving you an overview of the website and also getting into the specifics of some of the tools on the available. We are recording this. We should have the recording available online within the week, and actually we're shooting to be a little bit quicker. We also have various tutorials that we've already built out that are available on YouTube. Those are accessible through Go to Trails. We'll show you how to find those. We'll be adding more, and if there's any specific tools that you need to see, please don't hesitate to ask. If you have any questions that come up, please share those through the chat. We will be gathering those questions into sort of specific topics. Having Colin will be compiling them and we'll answer them at the end. We have about 20 minutes built into the presentation to do that. A reminder to mute your phone and use the chat feature. We expect to have lots of people involved, and so just to keep things rolling along, background noise, if we can avoid it, would be great. I already mentioned my email, but my contact information is available on the website. We will go through that. AJ will show you where that is. But again, thank you for joining us today, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Thanks, Frank. If anybody has trouble hearing me along the way, put a little note out. Colin is monitoring the chat, so if there is any technical issue or that type of thing, or I start kind of fading away, I don't have the strongest voice, then we can make a correction. And he will also be compiling any questions or whatnot through the chat so that we can answer towards the tail end of the presentation. If you're submitting a question, start off with the word question, just to make it a little bit easier to follow the thread of discussion and comments, so we can pull out those specific questions fairly quickly. What I'm going to try to do in terms of my time, in terms of walking everybody through, my goal is to give you an overview of the features of gototrails.com and give you a good idea in terms of its functionality or the operability, and at the end of the presentation actually take you through a little bit of a demonstration so you get a better hands-on in terms of not only how to use some specific tools, but at the same time maybe how to apply it to situations, circumstances, problems that you're currently grappling with or working on. So the video tutorials that Frank referred to are available. I'll show you where those are kind of housed within the website itself that you can get access to. Those do give very good detailed explanations, instructions. So some of the stuff that I'll be showing and through the demonstrations, I may be moving quickly. You feel free to go to those videos because you'll be able to see in more of a detailed demonstration of how those tools are actually employed and the menu settings and those types of things. And once we get in there, you'll have a better understanding of where I'm coming from on that. With that said, I'm going to jump into the meat of the presentation itself. Some of you may remember Go to Trails when it looked like this. This was version 1 of Go to Trails. Go to Trails was actually created as a tool to help a region within kind of western Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio, western New York, and western Maryland, and West Virginia try to piece together or develop a regional trail network. And originally the project started with a limited number of counties, and I say this with a smile on my face, limited being 32 counties. It grew at some point in time to about 53 counties or so. And because of the great distance, it was always a challenge of getting people in the room at the same time, meeting everybody's schedules, being able to share information and whatnot. And so we had to start looking at planning, not only in terms of this massive task of how do you plan a regional network over such a large area, but how do you even mechanically get a group together to actually sit down and discuss. In periodic meetings, once every 6 months, even once every 3 or 4 months, really limits how much progress that you can make. And consequently, that group kind of moved the direction of putting GIS information into what we would call cloud. Just as some of you may be familiar, just even at work or even at home, maybe some of you use Dropbox or Evernote, those types of things. Those are all cloud applications where your data isn't necessarily stored locally. It's stored on somebody else's server, and there's a little web portal to allow you to be able to access that information. And that's the direction that the group decided to go, and to house this information. Well, as soon as we did that, then we were kind of faced with the challenge of how to make that as friendly and accessible as possible, which meant we needed to create a website that people just went to access the data, rather than trying to remember usernames and passwords and special URL addresses and things like that. That seemed to be the simple thing. Well, that's when V1 of GoToTrails was born, and that's what you see in front of you. And then even that grew, because as groups started to see the utility and how user-friendly and how quick it was and convenient it was, people started asking for more and more things to be added to the website itself. Could it be a repository for materials, almost like a library? Could it be a place that we kind of exchange information, almost like a Dropbox? We're working on a grant, we need to have a place to put maps so we all can be using the same maps, etc. So it started to take a life of its own. So independent upon the tool that originally was to help solve a problem in terms of creating a regional network, it started to become almost its own entity, and the website grew. And at some point in time, we got too big for the original architecture, which led to version 2. And version 2 was unveiled back in March of this year, March of 2015. What you see on the screen right now, assuming there's not a major delay in terms of video, is the splash page or the home page for version 2. One of the things that we wanted to do, other than be able to continue to support the requests and desires that people are asking GoToTrail to try to satisfy, we also wanted to make it even more user-friendly and a little clearer in terms of the layout. And one of the big problems with the version 1, flipping back, there's lots of buttons and many nested menus, which meant you had to click 3, 4, 5 times to get to information you really wanted to have. Whereas on V2, one of the challenge was, let's get this as simple as possible and get people right to the key information they want to have. So hence we have basically one main page, and that's the splash page or the home page. There's 3 panels, and I'm going to walk you through kind of those 3 components and then start taking you through the individual elements or pieces of the website itself. The first panel is basically the introduction. There's no operable features there. If you click around, you're not going to get launched and taken somewhere else, but it basically introduces you. It's a roller, so you can just scroll either with your mouse or if you're using a Mac with the touchpad. You're able to scroll down to the second panel, which starts to give more information related to the whole idea of GIS and the cloud itself. These are all pop-up images in terms of having additional information. Just clicking through some of these so you get a sense of the information that's there. That's more a matter of building awareness and advocacy in terms of the planning effort or the ability of using GoToTrails for a variety of planning functions. And then the last panel, as you further scroll up, is the Let's Explore map. And what you see in front of you right now is a map of the regions that currently are supported by GoToTrails. So GoToTrails was not limited to that initial group of community or counties and trail groups and trail organizations and trail partners that were trying to put together a regional network over 53 counties, which is known as the Industrial Heartland. It grew to include other portions of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. In the case of the circuit, moving into New Jersey. Go to Trails has had discussions with folks in the Cincinnati area related to the Green Umbrella, as well as the Niagara region up in the Buffalo, Toronto area. So Go to Trails is no longer just a planning tool just for the Industrial Heartland trails. It's now become a planning tool for other regions, and we can support additional expansion to that. The regions that you see defined, Go to Trails calls trail regions. These are not synonymous with other regions, planning regions, whether it's through Ohio Natural Resources, whether it's through Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. These regions don't ally with any other planning programs or those types of things. We needed a way to be able to organize and structure data. They began to take form based on trail corridors, to some degree geography, and these will probably change over time yet again, but it is a way of at least organizing the data. There are some major corridors that will traverse multiple regions. There are some trail corridors that will extend through the Industrial Heartland into the ridges and valleys. Or there's corridors, the Delaware Lehigh, as an example, spans from northeast through ridges and valleys to the circuit. So we've been able to organize the data in a manner that you can look at it by these trail regions, or you can look at it by the trail. So if I do want to find information on the Delaware Lehigh, I can extract that out of the GIS database and see the entire DNL corridor in its entirety, or I can look at it based on region by region. Each of these regions also has a different level of information related to the trail content and the data that's in the GIS database itself, and I'll explain this in a little bit more detail as we go a little bit further. But this is the main portal to get to the data. So you land on the home page, you scroll up, and you click your region, and you're now going into a GIS environment. I'm going to use the Industrial Heartland just as an example at this moment, and launch us into that portion of the GIS portal itself. This page, while it is for the Industrial Heartland, is a standard look that you'll find in every region. So if I jump back out, and I have to go slowly, take up for some lag time in terms of the going through the internet, I'm going to click on the Northeast region, and you'll see the Northeast region has exactly the same layout. Now you'll notice there's a little bit of a difference. The colors are not nearly as vibrant on the Northeast region for the Plan and the Explorer. Anytime you see that, that is indicating that that work is underway. So we don't have a complete data set there. Manage is highlighted, very vivid. We have a complete data set under Manage. So that is all useful information that can be used immediately. This is an area that Pennsylvania Environmental Council is working on right now. So hopefully within the next few months through the course of the spring of 2016, this will be populated with a full data set, which will then be comparable to the Industrial Heartland Trail region. Jumping back out and going to the Industrial Heartland, the dashboard, as I said, always looks the same. And we looked at these dashboards as wanting to be uniform, because there were various audiences we wanted to really kind of be able to provide support to. There was the planners, the people that are looking at corridors and trying to figure out how to eliminate gaps to make connectivity, how to reach new destinations, how to, in some cases, leverage of existing investments and develop trail towns. It ran a gamut of subjects that the planners were really focused on. We also had a core audience that is more the trail operators, those everyday managers. They may be planners from time to time, but they're also the ones that have to focus on making sure that trash receptacles along the trails are emptied, pavilions are taken care of, and the trail surface itself is in good shape. So they have a different set of needs. Then we had another audience that was the trail explorers, the everyday users, the people that ride or go hiking that want to be on the trail and are looking for a different type of set of information. They want to know about the trail. They want to know how long the trail. They want to know how much elevation gain is on the trail, that kind of stuff. So what we found was we have these different audiences, and so we elected to develop 3 toolboxes that would be specifically designed to support what their interests or what their needs were. So the 3 circles that you see, plan, manage, explore, represent those 3 toolboxes. Everything's color-coded. I grew up in the days of Garanimals, so I always learned to match the rhinoceroses with the rhinoceroses and orange with orange. Anytime you see brown, plan is related to the brown colors. The dark aqua is related to manage, and explore, orange, is explore. So anytime you're in any of the interfaces and you're looking at a dashboard or what's on the computer screen, if you just see what the color is, you know what the color is, you know what toolbox that you're in. I'm going to take you through first the plan toolbox. The layout of every dashboard, it doesn't matter if it's plan, manage, or explore, is always exactly the same. So in the case of what's popping up, you'll get a main map screen. Again, we're in the industrial heartland, so it centers on the trails within the industrial heartland. If we were back in the circuit, we would be centered on the city of Philadelphia and kind of its countryside and the trails within that region. And in Northeast, we would be centered around Scranton and in that area. But the dashboard design is exactly the same in all 3 toolboxes. And I'll just take you quickly around the screen. In the upper left corner always are the zoom controls. So the zoom control, just like a Google map, just as if you're pulling up Google on your phone to get directions and to look at a map. If I want to zoom in, move closer to Earth, I hit the plus sign. If I want to zoom back out, I hit the minus sign. And what you'll notice is the data as you zoom in on the map begins to change. So just as if you're a jet airliner looking down on the Earth, you really at that elevation cannot see a trash can on the ground, but you can see a highway. So the map was organized that certain layers of data will reveal themselves depending upon what elevation you're viewing the information, or what we refer to as zoom level. So you'll notice as we zoom in, different data sets will come on and off, line types will begin to change, and other information will appear. To always know what that information is the little legend off to the left side of the zoom control. If you just click on that, a legend will appear which will describe all the line work and the colors and the line types that you will see on the map itself. And as the zoom level changes, that legend begins to change. And I'll pop back out. Is there still a little delay here, Colin? Zoom back out, and you see how the legend changed. So, one tip I guess I would suggest, anytime you're looking at the map, I would always, unless you're on a smartphone because of the size of the screen and the limited space, pop your legend out so you can always keep track of what layers are appearing on the screen and what layers are not appearing. Immediately below the zoom controls is the little house and the little bore sight, or the gun sight, so to speak. The house is home. So the home button will always bring you back to the regional view, however that was originally set. In the case of the Industrial Heartland Trail, it's always that view. So that's you ever get lost, you just hit the house and it'll take you back out to this very distant scale, which is out about 16 miles to be able to see. The little bore sight or the gun sight icon is Find My Location. And if you're on an iPad or you're on a phone, I do not have my location services enabled on my computer. Don't need to be on my desktop. Don't need to be tracked in terms of my desktop. But if you hit that, it'll show the little blue dot relative to this particular region where you're currently located. So if you did want to pull up Go to Trails and you're on a bike ride and you want to know where you are, you can enable your location services and be able to have the gun sight locate exactly where you are. And I don't know why. I guess I have some mail up on my screen, so ignore those little pop-ups. Moving over to the upper right corner, there's 3 icons over on this side. The leftmost, is your base map. And what this will allow us to do is change the wallpaper, so to speak, behind the trail line work itself. So this will allow us to turn on aerial images, change it to a light gray canvas, show your traditional USGS information. I'll just turn on the aerial image. As it's loading, now you can see it's basically satellite photography. As you zoom in, that imagery remains there. This will load again. It's tallying all that satellite information. And you can see, in this case, we have jurisdictional boundaries, whether they're state boundaries or county boundaries. And all the trail work is overlaid over top of that background. So the base map truly is, as we refer to it as wallpaper, is behind the scenes. But that left button is where my cursor is right now, is what allows you to be able to change the nature of the base map. And the middle button is for your layer control. So the legend shows what layers are actually shown at the immediate moment. What this allows you to do is be able to turn layers on and off. And I'm just going to, for simplicity's sake, I'm going to zoom out here and go back to a topographic view, turn my layer control on, and if I don't want to see that regional network, I turn that off. Now, what is unique about this legend in the layer control is, as you zoom in, some of these layer controls become operable. So right now, at this level, the only thing you can see is the Industrial Heartland Regional Network. So that's the only layer control that really you can turn on and off. But if I begin to zoom in, I can start turning off the gaps, which are those purple haze. So that's a trail that does not currently exist. It's planned, but doesn't currently exist. That is identified by the purple haze. Every map is the same way on the Industrial Heartland in terms of the way they illustrate it. That's my layer control. So depending upon what zoom you're in, this layer control has different operability. And the last button on the side is the bookmarks, which we have preset bookmarks. This will allow us, again, to go back to the regional extents. Moving down and moving my panel out of the way, moving down to the lower left is where the zoom control, the scale is, the graphic scale. At the regional extents in the Industrial Heartland, we're at 60 miles, and you'll notice this number will change as I start to zoom in. We're now at 30 miles, and we continue in, we're at 20 miles. Going back out to the outer region, the last bit of information here on the main page is the coordinates. So the coordinates follow your cursor. So anywhere I place my cursor, I get new lat long information. This is actually, we use this internally in the office when we're just trying to locate something, because it's just go to trails.com, right to it, as opposed to doing it through Google. You have to go into about 3 submenus until you can actually generate your lat long. So it has a lot of utilities beyond just trail planning, so to speak. But if you're, for instance, working on a project, say it's a railroad crossing, trail crossing over a railroad, and you want to share information about that precise location, you can literally go to it on the map, use your cursor to generate what those lat longs are, and email to somebody else so that they can load into their map and go directly to that location. So it's a handy little piece of information to have. In terms of The last part of the standard user interface is the sidecar that's on the left side of all the screens. So doesn't matter if you're in Plan, doesn't matter if you're in Manage or Explore, always on the left side are what we call the tool sets. So to go back for the jargon, we call these Plan, Manage, Explore toolboxes. When you enter a toolbox, you will always then have a set of tools or a tool set specifically for that toolbox. And when you look at the tool set that's within Plan, it will look distinctly different than, say, Explore. So here is where, because of different users and audiences, we started trying to give work environments for people a user interface that is tailored specifically to what their needs are. So again, clicking on any one of these will pop this out. So I'm on the legend, that's the first little icon. The second one is, in the case of the Plan toolbox, is measuring tools. So it gives me the ability to measure an area. It gives me the ability to measure distance. It gives me the ability to find a specific location. The next one is add a graphic or the artist palette in terms of the icon. And I'll give you a demonstration. We'll feature this a little bit later in today's webinar, so I'm going to kind of gloss over this one quickly. But what it does allow you to do is annotate the drawing. So the screen that you see in front of us, you can literally annotate and be able to keep that information for yourself or to share with other people, to submit to GoToTrails.com to make a correction. Maybe you're looking at a map and you see that there's something that's inaccurate or something that's been implemented since the last time it's been updated, and you want to offer that as a revision. This is really the tool set that everybody for the last 9 months has been using to make those types of editorial comments. And as I said, it gives you, this interface gives you the ability to not only you mark up maps and to come up with your own ideas and do some, to some degree, actually detailed design, but then to be able to share that very quickly. And again, we'll highlight this in one of the demonstrations. And then the last tool set is the printing interface. And again, this will go to your local printer. If you go print something, it's not going to end up at Pennsylvania Environmental Council's office. It'll come out of your local printer. The first time you go through that, you will have to browse your printer. But you're able to rename things, select what page type. If you're going to a plotter, you can go to a large format, or if you're using just a little Epson or HP, desktop, you can stay with the standard sheet sizes, or you can write directly to a PDF, so you can literally save an image and not have a hard copy be produced itself. Okay, moving back out then to kind of the toolboxes, and I'm just going to go to Explore and take you through kind of the layout of standard Explore. As this is loading, the very first thing you'll notice when the interface fully redraws, you'll notice that the tool sets that are on the right side or the left side of the screen are different than what we just looked at under Plan. The map is also different. Explore, it doesn't matter what your region is, it'll always come up giving you this overall look. So you'll be able, because what we're finding is people are traversing multiple regions at one time. And while you can click on an area and be taken directly to the trails within that region, oftentimes people are looking for more of a broader context, more of a regional context. So this is the standard map you'll find come up on Explore, and it doesn't matter whether you're Northeast PA or the Green Umbrella or wherever. This is the standard interface map that you'll see. But you'll notice over on the left side, the tool sets are a little bit different. We also, in this one, have the ability to find a particular location, and I'm going to go to Cleveland, and this will take us directly into the map will repaint. We won't have to see Cleveland in huge letters forever. But it also will then take us into a preset zoom level so you can see the trails immediately that are within that area. Again, pop out your legend to see exactly what is depicted there. What are those red lines? Those are the off-road trails. The brown ones are on the on-road, and which I don't see in my screen. It doesn't appear that there's any single track in that particular area. We're also then, in terms of the Explorer tool set, are able to generate directions. So literally I can generate directions from, say, Cleveland back to Buffalo or to Ashtabula or whatever, and it will give me turn-by-turn types of directions. There is the artist palette, which is common to the plan toolbox. So the utility here is exactly the same. So this one is a commonality, and the print function is a commonality. One of the things that we're working on, and I didn't say this in the beginning, we're actually starting to work on version 3 of GoToTrails, and apparently that is a common thing in terms of web applications, that the job is never quite done because people find more creative ways of using information. One of the things that has come up in terms of Explorer, utility-wise, people want to be able to generate elevation profiles, etc. So if they're planning a ride, they can click on a section of trail. You know, for instance, this section of trail over here by Lakewood, be able to click on that and be able to get an elevation profile generated so they could see, and this is actually a bad example because it's probably about 20 feet of elevation gain along the lakeshore, but they would be able to see, oh, okay, that could be a more challenging route because there's quite a bit of elevation gain. So features, as you guys are mulling this over after the webinar, thinking how you can utilize and hopefully take advantage of GoToTrails.com itself, and the features and the toolboxes and tool sets that are there. If there are things like what I just described, the elevation profile kind of tool that you would like to see added, please email Frank, and at the end I'll give you his contact information. But we're always looking for ideas, and so that has led us to, yes, starting to conceptualize what is going to be added in version 3, and that is one of the expansions we know under Explorer that we'll be able to do that. Another example is to be able to actually save a route so that I can sit down and plan a route, click on line segment by line segment, tally up my total mileage, and then be able to save that in my own profile so I could pull it up then on my phone and be able to see that trip in the future. So whether I'm on it or I'm thinking about it the next week and I just want to review what I previously laid out. So those are the types of features that V3 really is trying to get into. So we're using V2 as a way of combing through the trail data, getting as accurate as possible, and getting the basic utilities in place so we can get as many people using it and familiar with it, and then begin to expand the functionality in V3. Going back to the main interface, again, I talked about the overall regions. Each of the regions has a little bit different level of data. So in the case of the Northeast Pennsylvania, which we'll use as one of the demonstrations, their level of information is not as combed through as, say, the Industrial Heartland Trail. In the case of the circuit, their data is very combed through in terms of where trails and routes are located. The level of information that we have in terms of amenities and things like that compared to some of the other regions isn't quite to the same level. So every region is a little bit different. We're working to try to get every region to a comparable level. This is a little bit of a lesson learned on our end as regions like the Green Umbrella and the Niagara region are coming into the fold. We now have more of kind of a prescription list of things that we want to start off with. So we do have a standard baseline that every region, as other regions join in as a part of the overall GoToTrails.com effort, we would have some basic standard in terms of those regions. One thing I didn't mention back out on the map page, as well as all pages, if you ever do need to get back to literally GoToTrails version 1, in the footer on the right side is always the link. If I hit that, it'll take me back to this page. So there are some data sets that are there that people always seem to want to get back to. Also in the footer, some information about the Pennsylvania Environmental Council. It takes you to their website, as well as then report a website problem launches email that gets sent to Frank if there is a problem, so he can respond to that as quick as possible. Other components that are a part of the main page and outside of the map itself is about. This is the link up at the top upper bar. And I'll go back because I think I would do that a little too quickly. I'm on the splash page, home page. If you hit about, this gives you a little bit of description of the beginnings of GoToTrails.com and gives you contact information for David and for Frank at PEC. Also is resources. There's 3 components to resources. The select a region, which is a map you're all familiar with. It just goes back to that first page. The other thing under resources, and I'm just going to go directly to the resource page. So this is the map gallery where we just were. There's then the second element, which is planning library, and I'll take you through this quickly. The Industrial Heartland, through their trail planning effort, has compiled a tremendous amount of information. As they've analyzed gaps and whatnot, they've used GoToTrails.com as their vehicle to share information amongst all their partners and constituents. So they kind of use, literally, GoToTrails.com as their meeting forum. So many presentations have been presented directly from the website because they house everything within the website, and we certainly can do that in other regions. There's an appeal to actually being able to do that. So right now what you see in the planning library is all Industrial Heartland information pegged through some of their other planning efforts across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We'll be adding shortly the Northeast Pennsylvania. We'll be opening up basically a drawer, so to speak, in the planning library for their information, as well as other regions. So I'm just going to use the Industrial Heartland as the example right now. There is a whole series of information and maps, data sets that are related to their background when they were doing an analysis. So at one point in time, they were looking at where their gaps were, and this is launching a PDF map of where those trail gaps are. They're all color-coded. You can zoom in, see the legend. There's some statistical information. These are all PDFs. They're all static maps. And there's a whole series of topics that they were kind of looking at. Population density, population nodes, household density, etc. Getting down into commuting, wellness. As soon as we publish the PDF maps, darn when somebody say, hey, but I want to make my own map. Can we have an interactive map? So hence we went back to the GIS online and we gave them the ability to have an interactive map. Anytime you see background maps, they're in the black user interface. So where my cursor is right now, this black interface. So anytime you see black interface, that doesn't belong with Plan, Manage, Explore. It's general information, it's background information. So this is the 4th color, and it's the last one in terms of my color palette. But this was an interface that people could actually manipulate. And the way they do that is over here in the tool sets. The first is the layer control. If you notice, we took the layer control that you saw on the other Plan, Manage, and Explore interface, then took it out of the upper right corner and put it over here. And as this is loading, what you'll see is a whole list of topics that we can repaint this map on. So right now we're showing in the Industrial Heartland Trail region all the trail destination corridors and their gaps, which are shown in purple. But I can look at that in the context of, say, population nodes. So the black dots are where there's major population nodes. And if I want a little information or to be able to change the order where these appear, I can do that through those little arrow controls. I can move it up and down. So right now it's number 2 on my list, which means I can take other color fills and place over top of it. You can compose literally a map. It gives you the ability to do quite a bit of custom tailoring. Where is this very useful? Where we found when people were writing grants, when people were trying to make presentations, that they needed to generate maps on their own to present to a local official, a county commissioner, etc., that they would be able to do that and do it in a manner that they could customize and not call anybody and do it on their own. And the second one I want to turn on is population density. So this is statistical data. So the GIS trail data is literally tied to socioeconomic information. We have business data. We can show you where the restaurants are. We can show you how many people live in a particular census tract. The information, and I'm going to zoom back into the Cleveland area. The information that we have currently housed in here goes to census tract. For you planner types, you'll probably understand the significance of that. There's a level of data that's even finer than that. We elected not to show that just because of how much data that's there and how long it takes to repaint the map, and you can see there's a little bit of delay. But what you're able to do is literally, right here's a trail gap, that purple area, where my cursor is. I'm able to say I want to write a grant. I can click on that census tract and I can see that 2,222 people live there. The population density, so the people per square mile, is 10,100. I can use that information as a part of my argument in terms of my grant narrative. I can use that to support a point that I'm trying to make in a presentation, whether it's in a narrative or an oratory presentation. So it was trying to get everyday planning information into the hands of the users that need it. And to go try to do that as a trail group and find that information on your own can be daunting, because in some cases people don't even, volunteers, they don't even know where to go look for that kind of information. Again, this set was created for the Industrial Heartlands region. It doesn't exist for other regions right now, but as a part of other planning efforts, it certainly can. What we're able to showcase is the ability to accommodate that kind of information and to give functionality and go to trails to be able to do that. So if that's a challenge in a region, Go to Trails may be able to help you overcome that as a challenge itself. Closing the menu, and I don't think I said this earlier, the little arrow down here at the bottom of the left sidecar when it pops out, the double arrow that you see there, if you click on that, that's how you close that sidecar once again. If I didn't say that earlier, you didn't figure that out on their own. I'm going to jump back out to the main interface in terms of the planning library and go to the Web Map Assistance, and then we'll get into our demonstration. Okay, Web Map Assistance is where you can find the video tutorials. There are 3 that are currently live. There's an overview. There's how to use the graphic tool, and I'll give the demonstration of that very shortly. And there's how to import, export, and save graphics. We're currently uploading by the end of probably tomorrow. We'll have a series of additional videos. By the end of the week, we'll have number 4 through number 7 completely loaded. As Frank said earlier, webinar number 1 will be loaded, so you'll be able to go directly to the video and to replay. In terms of the overview, just click on this. The videos are housed within YouTube, so when you hit this link, it'll actually take you to another viewer. And the map itself, or the video, will pop up in the standard YouTube video. Because we're recording this is going to sound a little muddled, but you can hear the video launches immediately. And Colin is the voice of Go to Trails. So Colin is the kind of the narrator for the videos. There's also a user guide, kind of standard printed user guide that takes you through, again, a lot of what we talked about today: legend, the zoom levels, some of the tools. It gives kind of a written explanation of those. And now jumping back out, I'm going to go to start the demonstration. We'll go to the Northeast Pennsylvania Trail region. As you see, the plan data set isn't fully complete, so we don't have that enabled yet, nor is Explore. I'll go to Manage. So the basic trail line work is in, but we're still working on some of the attribute information, some of the kind of the information about the trails themselves, etc. When I say attributes, and we did a pre-save bookmark, so I'm going to move to Dalton, and what I'm going to take you through very quickly is a quick demonstration just to show you how some groups have been using this tool. And just looking at the maps here is a kind of an obvious example. Here we have a proposed trail. It used to be an old trolley line, and here we had an existing trail that had a break. What we want to do is literally draw and share with others completing that corridor. Now, right now I have basic topo on, but what I do want to see is a little bit more context, so I'm going to turn on the aerial image and see I'm in kind of a small village or suburban kind of setting, and it looks like there's an on-road road there. So while the road line work appeared to be the road, the aerial definitely verifies that. And so what I'm going to do is come down to the graphic tool, add graphic, and you'll remember this interface that'll pop up. What I want to do is add a new graphic, and because this is all straight lines, I'll use the polyline. I can draw dots, I can draw shapes, I can add text annotation, but we'll use the polyline, and I'm going to pick a very orange and a big line width, and I'm going to draw this in, double click to end my line, and you'll see the interface changes a little bit. I can now come back and rename this. I'm going to call this Colin idea number 1, and I'm going to save it. Now I can export that so I make it something that I can share with other people, because right now this is all within my computer. So I want to hit export, and you'll see this gobbledygook that shows up on the screen. Don't panic, you're not having a system failure. It's not a blue screen. This is, if you're working on a PC, or you will be working on a PC, this is the data that drives a JSON file. For Mac users, I'm on a Mac right now, so I'm going to take you through an extra step. We can't read this. We don't understand JSON files. What we can read are text files. So if you're working on a PC and you hit that export, you would just save this file to your desktop, and then I'll show you how to reopen that. In the case if you're working on a map, I'm going to select all, I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to open up a Word file, and I'm going to make a new one, and I'm going to paste it in here, and you see all that stuff transferred. And now I'm going to save as, and I'm going to call it, again, Colin idea number 1. But down here, format, I need to change it. I want to save it as a text file, as a .txt. Save that. Then I can reopen it. Now, for the sake of time, what I'm going to do is reopen a separate file. I'm going to close that. I don't need that any longer. I'm going to move up to another part of the region, which is a little bit further up this road here. I pre-saved a few things, and so I'm going to show you a trail extension and a trail head. I'm going to take you through just the standard steps. So somebody emailed you that text file or the JSON. I would come here and do exactly these steps. I want to import graphic now, so I choose my file. I've saved all these onto a desktop folder, webinar files, and I'm going to go to idea number 4, AJ idea number 4. I'm going to choose that. Okay, nothing happened. Don't panic. Hit the little blue arrow. Don't ask me why, but you got to hit the blue arrow. And now you see down in this part of the region, there's a purple line and a blue parking lot that I added. I did that last night. There's another file, and I forgot. I was thinking that this one was, I think that's idea number 2, so I loaded the wrong one, but we'll just use this as the example. But this was just a save file. I didn't just draw this, as you can see. I loaded it. So you can aggregate these things. So I could draw something, send it to Frank. Frank can add some notations to it, send it to Colin. Colin can then open that file. He could further annotate that, resave it, export it, send it back to me, or send it to somebody else, and you're further kind of sharing the information. The other thing that you're able to do is extract information related to measuring. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit more, and I'm going to take my square that I just did here, and I'm going to measure in square feet how big that square is. And so I trace back over this, and I know that that's 37,000 square feet, so it's not quite an acre. So that information is showing up over here, and if I'm going to close that, I can always pull that information back up, because the database, as long as that object remains in the database, that information will always be there. So you literally can lay out, to zoom back out a little bit further, that orange corridor that I drew, or the one I drew last night in purple, I can measure how long that is. So, hey, we're having a conversation of making a trail extension, filling in a gap. That's 900 feet that we need to close the gap. And yes, you can, Frank just asked, wanted me to clarify, you can actually change your settings in your draw tool so you can see the length as you're drawing. So you can do that dynamically, or you can do that actively as you're drawing. Okay, in terms of next items, do you want to move to questions? Because we're winding down in terms of people's time. One of the things to lead into that, we are working on, as I said earlier, version 3. So ideas for version 3 are warmly welcomed. Feel free to get those to Frank, and let me pop back up. I think you saw his contact information there in the one Word file. What we want to be able to do is in 2016, in the early part of 2016, to be able to work on version 3 in earnest, maybe have a rollout of that sometime in the summertime, but continue to work on some of the tools that are within V2, but always keep an eye on V3. We're also working on a manager app and a traveler app. So the manager app was intended to be something that if you try to use GoToTrails on a smartphone, it's a little bit difficult because of the screen size. But some things that came out in meetings with some of the trail operators that functionality would love to have is on a smartphone be able to walk down the trail, and if there's a fallen tree or there's a washout, be able to hit a button, record the GPS coordinate where that is located, or take a photo of that with the GPS coordinate that's located, and have that be added to a layer that they have access to. So one of the things that we've been able to do for some trail groups is to create what we call sandboxes, that they have their own editable layers that they kind of use to do thinking. You can find that if you mess around with go to trails and you go to the Industrial Heartland trail region, go to the manage toolbox and just kind of roll your mouse over. You'll see a sandbox created for Allegheny County Park Trails. There's also a sandbox made for the Allegheny Valley Trails. So it's their own little workspace. We can accommodate other regions, other trail groups, and do a very similar thing. But that information from the manager app would get added to literally their own environment. We can add security there, so it's a private space that right now what you see in the Industrial Heartlands doesn't have any security. Nobody felt they needed that, but we can do that. So there's a login, a username, and a password. We can contain information related to trash cans, bathrooms. You can monitor how often bathrooms are cleaned, etc. So those are things that are in the work. In terms of questions specifically, Frank, you want to?
So one of the questions that came up was, between the different plan, manage, and explore, within the Explore a Trail toolbox, how do gaps appear? Are we showing the gaps to the trail users? Is it to show that completed trails versus proposed trails? How is that being handled?
Yeah, great question, and I'm being very candid. That's probably somewhat of a work in progress. I'm going to go to Industrial Heartland, hit Explore. I apologize, it has to reload the page. If I come into the trail region itself, what we want to be able to do is only show existing trails. So that's something that we're currently working on, just to have those data sets. And working with some of the local trail groups, yes, there was concern of on a map being able to have somebody believe that they can navigate on a trail that didn't actually exist. We have different states of trails. While there's some trails that are kind of in the works, meaning they've been planned, maybe money's been appropriated, but there's nothing, it hasn't been resurfaced. But you could walk through an area, and there's many instances that we all know, probably have our own examples of that. So right now we remove that data as we're working through, and me saying it's a work in progress. But the intent right now is when you come to Explore, you're only going to see existing trails. And that was the concern of liability and safety and those types of things.
So the next question is also on the Explore front, and it's how are you showing businesses, restaurants, lodging information, that sort of thing? And I think the example in Allegheny County is probably
Emerald View. I'll take you into kind of the Emerald View Park, and the long and short is in around the city of Pittsburgh, we had several trail groups that went out and collected their own data. We do have access. The Trail GIS database does dovetail with Esri business data. We can also dovetail with Google data, just like the same Google data that you find, on your smartphone if you use a Google app, that type of thing. What we found is some of the information isn't always the most up to date. So we had a couple local trail groups go out and collect within their neck of the woods, so to speak, their area, very detailed information. And I'm zooming in here on kind of the city of Pittsburgh and the Mount Washington area, because that's one of the areas where they did collect an enormous amount of information related to not only sites and features and things like that, but also businesses. And I should not have. Sorry, I'm going to jump back out to the plan because that layer is enabled within plan, not manage. We do not have the business data enabled for the entire region. And right now, as groups were beginning to plan certain areas, that's when we enable certain areas. Just because there's a time issue in terms of loading all that information. We wanted to make it as quick as possible, and there's some technical things we need to work through on that. But you'll see as we are kind of coming into the Mount Washington area, all those symbols just began to pop up, and I'm going to jump my legend out here. Other amenities, points of feature, trail features. If I click on, I'll get a dialog box that in some cases gives me photos of what I see along that portion of the trail. If I click on this site over here, this is giving me information in terms of that's a trailhead. I can park my car there. And in some areas, we're able to log how many cars, how many spaces that are in that parking space. Here's a point of interest, interpretive information. So this neighborhood wanted to kind of use their own information that they felt very comfortable with and be able to kind of not rely on some of the business data, but some of the other information. From region to region, it's varying. As we work through this a little bit further, we do want to enable using either the Esri or the Google data region-wide. So we're a little bit away from that, but we're able to accommodate it. From region to region, we have used that information. Will Prince, through his efforts in Trail Towns, we've enabled that information, so he has used business data. He can literally look up the local pizza shops, the nearest bike shop. He was using that as a part of his trail planning effort or his trail town planning efforts. So we turn that on and off as needed.
So I think this might actually be the last question so far, but if you go back to the home page, so the landing page, splash page for Go to Trails, you didn't highlight the news tab.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, my bad. If we hit the news tab, and this was actually something that we didn't really have in a robust format as a part of version 1, and something that really started to come out, which this is a quiet plea to you guys in terms of the webinar audience. We need your help on this to keep things up to date, to keep good, fresh content. People wanted to use the news section of this as an advocacy piece, as a way of keeping everybody in the loop. It doesn't matter if I'm over in Cumberland, Maryland, as opposed to Cleveland, Ohio, or in Upper Darby in the Philadelphia area. I wanted to be able to get current information. So the left side of this is press articles, press coverage, when somebody received a major grant, or the article that you see posted up at the top is when the Three Rivers Heritage Trail, Friends of the Riverfront in the Pittsburgh area, had released kind of their trail count information. Over on the right side is the upcoming events, talking about upcoming conferences, the webinar today, when the Erie to Pittsburgh Trail Alliance, that's one of the partners in the Industrial Heartland region, is. This isn't limited to anybody in the Industrial Heartland, this is anybody. So if there's content, if there's meetings that you want to get advertised, because what we're trying to do is use this gototrails.com really as the forum for the trail community. So it doesn't matter if you're in any of those color blobs back in the home page anything that's related to trails, we really kind of want to use that as a central space. And so again, the quiet plea, you guys as the audience, as the trail doers, we need you to keep us fresh. And so directing Frank to that kind of content is important. And putting up on the screen again, Frank's contact information, both his email and his cell number.
Well, AJ, thank you very much. We've gone over 1 o'clock just a little bit. Thank you everyone for hanging out with us for this morning for this webinar. If you have any further questions, certainly consult those tutorials that are online. Those will get into some more of the specifics. Feel free to email me. My contact information is there. The phone number is my cell phone, but that's my main work phone. Thank you again, everyone. We really look forward to making this a usable tool to advance trails throughout the region. A lot of this is about what it is your needs are, and so we're looking for that. There's quite a bit that we have on the plate for version 3 of GoToTrails, but this is the direction, and we look to hear your feedback. Thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.